Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, Parak Aleph, Chapter 1, Mishnah Gimel, Mishnah 3. Before we begin the Mishnah, we need an introduction, a very important introduction, an introduction that's going to be relevant for a lot of the Mishnayos that we're going to be learning. Okay, so we have a mitzvah called Kiddush HaChodesh, sanctifying the new month. How we establish the new month, how we establish a new month is called Kiddush, sanctifying the new month. According to Torah law, we don't work with a calendar. Now we work with a calendar because we don't have the process about we don't have or are not able to use the process that the Torah wants us to use. So we use a calendar. But the process the Torah wants us to use is the following. And of course, it created a calendar, but it wasn't like an established set calendar like we have now. In the Jewish calendar, a month is either 29 or 30 days long. Okay, that's a fact. 29 or 30 days long. It was the duty of the Beis Din, which means the court, but in this case, it means the high court, the Sanhedrin, to decide when one month ends and the next one begins. So it's not a standard calendar. Right? It's up to the Beis Din, the rabbinical court, the highest rabbinical court, the Sanhedrin, to decide when a month begins, when a month ends. They did so based on the appearance of the moon, or on the appearance of the new moon. The new moon means the moon's first appearance as a narrow crescent. That is called the new moon. If the new moon was seen on the night that began the 30th day of the outgoing month, meaning in Jewish law, when does the day begin? By night. Night is the beginning of the day, the calendar day. Okay? So now, if the new moon was seen on the night that began the 30th day of the outgoing month, the Beis Din would declare that day to be Rosh Chodesh. What would have been day 30 of the outgoing month now becomes the first day of the new month, because it was on the night of the 30th that the witnesses saw the new moon, and they came to the Beis Din and they told the Beis Din, and the Beis Din went through its process of determining. Okay, so again, if the new moon was seen on the night that began the 30th day of the outgoing month, the Beis Din would declare that day to be Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the new month. If the new moon was not seen until the night that began the 31st day, or wasn't seen at all, the 31st day would be Rosh Chodesh. That's the difference between having a 29-day month and a 30-day month. If you see the new moon on what would have been day 30, that becomes day 1 of the next month. Your previous month only had 29. If it comes out that you saw it on the 31st, what would have been the 31st day of the outgoing month, then that becomes day 1 of the new month, which means your previous month had 30 days. Now, since most festivals fall on a certain date of the month, for instance, Pesach falls on the 15th of Nisan, the Beis Din would send out messengers to inform those who lived far from Yerushalayim where Rosh Chodesh fell, so that they would know when to observe the festivals. There were people, if you lived in Yerushalayim, you found out. What if you lived further away from Yerushalayim? So there was a point where it came, or what the Beis Din would do is they would send messengers out to let people know when Rosh Chodesh began, when Rosh Chodesh was declared. And then they would figure out, okay, when's day 15? Messengers were sent out only on the months that contained festivals, as the Mishna explains. Wasn't sent out every month. They didn't send out for the month of Cheshvan, let's say. There's no holidays in Cheshvan. They didn't send out for Shvat. There was no holidays in Shvat. Okay, so now we're going to say which are the months for which the Beis Din sends out its messengers. Al Shisha Chadashim Ashluchin Yoitzim. It is for the following 6 months that the Beis Din, again, in this case, the highest court, the Sanhedrin, sent out messengers to those who lived far away from Yerushalayim to let them know when Rosh Chodesh was declared. Nisan Mipnei HaPesach. On Nisan, they sent out messengers because they want people to know when Pesach fell out. People needed to know when Rosh Chodesh of Nisan fell, so that they could observe the holiday of Pesach on the proper day, the 15th of Nisan. The messengers were sent as far as they could until Pesach, traveling every day except Shabbos. They didn't travel on Shabbos. And so they went as far as they could, by the time Pesach arrived. Okay? Now, people who lived so from Yerushalayim, the messengers could not reach them by Pesach, had to observe Pesach for 2 days to cover both possibilities. And this is the source for the practice today to observe 2 days of Yom Tov outside of Eretz Yisrael. That's the basis. Okay? So the Mishnah says the first example, the first of the 6 months that the messengers were sent out was for the month of Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, to know when Pesach would fall out. Okay. Next, did they have to send up? Don't look ahead. Did they have to send out a messengers to let us know when the month of Sivan fell out in order to know when Shavuos is going to be? Be quiet. Don't say anything.
I'd say no.
Why?
Because they were counting it.
The answer is Shavuos is 50 days after Pesach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so therefore, you don't need anybody to tell you. Once you know when Pesach was, you'll know when Shavuos is. Okay, now next, Al Av Tanis. They sent out for the month of Av for people to know about the fast of Tisha B'Av. Now, although the months of Tammuz and Teves also contained fast days, messengers were not sent out on those months because basically for Tisha B'Av, which is the most strict of fasts, they would send out messengers. For the other fasts that are not as strict or stringent, they didn't send out the messengers for that. Okay, next. Al Elo B'nei Rosh Hashanah. They let people know, they sent the messengers, let people know when is Rosh Chodesh Elul in order to know when is Rosh Hashanah. Now, Rosh Hashanah falls out, not in Elul, it falls out in Tishrei, right? Mm-hmm. However, since Rosh Hashanah is the very first day of Tishrei, the very first day of the month of Tishrei, it was important to send messengers that month to inform people about Rosh Hashanah. You can't send them out on Rosh Hashanah. It's too late. So you got to send them a month before. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the messengers would go out in Elul instead. Now, how did you know, though, if Elul was 29 days or 30 days? How do you know? Once people knew when Rosh Chodesh Elul fell, they would count 29 days and celebrate the next day as Rosh Hashanah. They could assume that Elul was only 29 days long and not 30 because that was its length in most years. It seems that historically it was very uncommon for again, when they were working with the witnesses of the new moon for Elul to be longer than 29 days. So they could rely on the majority of times to know, okay, we count this many days, and day 30 is Rosh Hashanah. Okay, now, next, Al Tishrei Mipnei Takanas HaMoedos. Now, they still sent out messengers on Tishrei, because you got to know when to establish the holidays that we have in Tishrei. You got to know when Yom Kippur is, you got to know when Sukkot is. So as they bring down in the notes, although for the sake of Rosh Hashanah, the people could assume that, now, I'll say it like this, right? Ask like this. You told me I can assume that Elul is going to be 29 days, and just based on that assumption, I can go ahead and I can celebrate Rosh Hashanah based on the assumption that Elul is 29 days. Okay, so from there, count 10 days for Yom Kippur, and then another 5 days for Sukkot. So the answer is, you're right, but people would feel a lot better if they actually heard when Tishrei fell out. So they sent out the messengers for Tishrei so that at least have as far as they could get before Yom Kippur and before Sukkot, people would know when it actually really is meant to be. Because at the end of the day, it is possible for El to be 30 days. It's possible. So therefore, in order to basically make people feel calmer and more comfortable about Yom Kippur and Sukkot, they sent out the messengers to let people know. Okay, next, Al Kislev B'nei Chanukah. They sent out for the month of Kislev of Chanukah. That means in the second Beis Hamikdash, they were still working with this, with the process of the witnesses. Val Adar B'nei Purim, and Adar because of Purim. Ukshahaya Beis Hamikdash Kayim, when the Beis Hamikdash was in existence, right? So that means, so you see clearly this process went even after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Yoitzin Af Al Iyar, messengers were sent even for the month of Iyar, Mipnei Pesach Katan, for the small Pesach, which we call Pesach Sheni, right? People who couldn't bring their Korban Pesach on the 14th of Nisan had a second chance to do it on the 14th of Iyar. Therefore, it was necessary. Therefore, the Sanhedrin would send down the messengers for the month of Iyar to let people know when Pesach Sheni was, so that they would know, when to bring their Korban Pesach if they missed it on Erev Pesach. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Now, the obvious question